This is the story of a poor woman named Amara and a billionaire named Kale. One was hungry and cold, the other had everything money could buy. But one rainy morning in Accra, their lives crossed in a way no one expected. And what happened after will make you cry. It was a cold morning. The rain was falling slowly. Cars rushed past on the busy Accra road. Amara stood at the corner holding her baby Zoe close to her chest. The baby was wrapped in a thin cloth. She was crying softly. Her body was cold. Her face was wet. Amara had no umbrella, no jacket, no food, no home. Her slippers were torn. Her dress was soaked. But she did not move. She could not move. Last night she and her baby had nothing to eat, not even one spoon of food. So this morning, even though the rain was falling, she was ready to stand by the roadside until someone helped. It wasn't because she wanted the food so badly for herself, but because her baby was hungry and she could not watch her child suffer again. People walked past. Some looked at her with pity, some looked away. Two men stood near her and whispered, "Why is she standing there in the rain?" "Maybe it's her job," the other man said. "A lot of people pretend just to get free money. Some even go as far as renting a baby to attract pity." Amara heard them, but she said nothing. She just wiped Zoe's face and rocked her gently. Amara stretched out her hand. Her voice was soft, tired but full of pain. "Please help me. Just small food for my baby. She has not eaten. Please." She looked down at Zoe's face. The baby's lips were dry. Her cry was now weak. Amara held her tighter. "Don't worry, my baby. Mummy will find food today, even if I have to stand here all day. Help will come." But Amara did not know that help was closer than she thought. Inside a black Jeep, a man sat at the back seat. His name was Kale. He was very rich, the kind of rich that made people look twice when he walked by. Today he was going to his office very early. He had a big meeting with some foreign people who wanted to work with his company. This meeting was very important. It could help his company grow and bring more business from different parts of the country. The road was busy. The cars were moving slowly. It was the usual Accra traffic. Kale leaned back in his seat and looked out through the glass, and then something caught his eye. He sat up. A young woman was standing by the roadside. She was holding a baby. The rain was still falling, not too heavy, but steady enough to soak someone. The baby was already wet. The woman looked tired, worn out, almost like she had no strength left. Kale's eyes stayed on her. He saw how she held the baby tightly, like that child was the only thing she had left in the world. She wasn't moving. She wasn't shouting. She just stood there, asking quietly for help. Kale felt something deep inside. He knew this wasn't ordinary. A person begging with a little baby in the rain. This was pain, real pain. He looked at her again, and then he made a decision. "Stop the car," Kale said. The driver looked back. "Sir, just stop." The driver pulled over and stopped the car. Kale opened the door. He stepped into the rain. His shoes touched the wet road. His suit began to get wet, but he didn't care. He walked slowly toward the woman. Amara didn't notice him. She was busy rocking her baby Zoe. The baby was still crying, soft and tired. Kale stood in front of her. Amara looked up. She was surprised to see a tall man standing so close. She looked at his face. He looked serious but kind. "Good morning," Kale said gently. Amara said nothing. She only nodded. He looked at the baby. "What's her name?" "Zoe," Amara replied softly. Kale stepped closer and looked at Zoe's face. She was shaking. Her lips trembled as she cried quietly. "Has she eaten?" he asked. Amara shook her head. "No, sir, not since yesterday." Kale looked at her soaked clothes. Her hands were freezing from the cold. "And you? Have you eaten?" Amara looked down. "No, sir, but it's okay. I just want to find food for my baby." Kale stayed quiet for a moment. He looked at both mother and child. Then he said, "Come with me." Amara looked up, confused. "Sir, come. Let me help you." Amara stood still. She looked at Kale. She was afraid. She had never spoken to a rich man before. She didn't know what to think. But when she looked at his eyes, they were calm. They were kind. She looked down at Zoe. The baby was still shaking. Her tiny fingers were cold. Amara took a deep breath. Then she nodded slowly. She followed Kale toward the black car. The driver opened the door. Amara stepped in, holding Zoe close to her chest. She sat carefully at the edge of the seat, afraid to touch anything. The driver looked at her through the mirror. He didn't say a word, but his eyes were full of questions. Amara avoided his eyes. She looked at her baby and kept rocking her gently. Beside her, Cale sat quietly. He looked ahead as the car moved. But his mind was full of thoughts. Who was this woman? What had happened to her? And how did she end up like this? Inside the car, Cale picked a small towel from the seat. He handed it to Amara. "Here," he said, "use this to dry the baby." Amara took the towel quickly. "Thank you, sir," she said. Her hands were shaking as she wrapped it around Zoe. Cale looked at her. Her dress was still wet, her hair was dripping, but she didn't complain. She was only focused on her baby. "What's your name?" he asked. "Amara," she replied softly. "Okay, Amara, where is your home?" Amara looked down. She didn't speak at first. Then she said in a low voice, "We sleep on the street, sir." Cale nodded slowly. He didn't show shock. He just breathed in and said, "All right, I'll take you somewhere safe." Amara looked up. Her eyes were wide. "Really, sir?" Cale nodded. "Yes, somewhere dry and warm. You and Zoe need rest and food." Tears filled Amara's eyes, but she wiped them quickly. "Thank you, sir. God bless you." Cale said nothing more. He looked out the window deep in thought, but Amara did not know that this was just the beginning. Cale looked at his watch again. He knew he was almost late for the meeting. The foreign representatives might be waiting at his office already. It was an important meeting, one that could affect a significant growth in his company. But he looked at Amara. He looked at her baby Zoe. They were both tired, cold, hungry. He shook his head. "No," he said to himself, "they need food first." He told the driver to stop at a small restaurant. They went inside. Cale didn't care who was watching. He ordered hot rice, fried plantain, chicken and warm milk for the baby. He asked them to bring water. Amara sat at the edge of the chair, still holding Zoe. Her stomach was turning. She had not eaten in 2 days. When the food came, she looked at Cale. "Can I eat here, sir?" she asked softly. Cale nodded. "Yes, eat." Amara bowed her head. She placed Zoe on her lap and fed her the warm milk. Then she started eating. She ate slowly at first, like someone who was afraid the food would disappear. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she chewed. Cale watched in silence. He didn't speak. He just waited. When she finished, she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. Then she looked up at Cale. Her voice was quiet. "Thank you, sir. God bless you, sir." Cale leaned forward. "Tell me what happened to you. How did you end up like this?" Amara looked down at her baby. Then she began to speak. "Sir, I don't have anyone in this world. My parents died when I was a little girl. I grew up in an orphanage in Kumasi. Life was hard, very hard. As I grew older, I learned how to survive. I worked in people's houses. I cleaned. I washed. I cooked. Anything I could do to survive." She looked at Zoe's face and kissed her forehead. "Then one day I met Leo. He was a taxi driver in Accra, but he came from a neighboring country. He was kind and we became close. We loved each other. After 1 year, he said we would get married." She paused. Cale was still listening. The restaurant was quiet. "A few months later, I found out I was pregnant. I was scared at first, but when I told Leo, he was happy. He said he was ready to marry me, but he needed to travel home and tell his family. He said it was their tradition that he must tell his family first before bringing his fiancée home." Her voice broke. "That was the last time I saw him." Cale blinked. He sat up straight. "What do you mean?" Amara nodded slowly. "He promised to come back in 1 week, but he never came back. His number stopped going. I waited. I cried. I begged his friends, but no one knew anything. Or maybe they were just hiding the truth. I don't know. I had no money left. I lost the house I was staying in. No job would take me because of the pregnancy. So I started sleeping outside. I begged for food." She wiped her eyes. "Now Zoe is all I have." Cale's heart was heavy. He looked at the little girl, now sleeping peacefully. Then he looked at Amara. She was still young, still full of hope, but life had treated her like nothing. Cale took a deep breath. He made a quiet promise in his heart. This is not where her story will end. Cale reached into his pocket. He brought out some money. Then he placed it on the table in front of Amara. "Take this," he said. "It will help you and your baby for now." Amara looked at the money. Her hands began to shake. "Sir, this is too much," she said quietly. "I can't take all of this." Cale looked her in the eyes. "Take it," he said again gently. "You need it." Amara looked down at Zoe, who was still asleep in her arms. She picked the money and held it close to her chest. Then she bowed her head. "Thank you, sir. May God bless you." Cale nodded. He smiled a little. Then he looked at his wristwatch. His eyes widened. The time for his meeting had already passed. The foreign guests were probably already at his office. He stood up quickly. "I have a very important meeting this morning," he said. "It will last for about 3 hours." He brought out a card from his wallet. It was his business card. It had his name and number on it. He handed it to her. "Call me after 3 hours," he said. "I will come to wherever you are and take you and your baby to a safe place." Amara held the card carefully like it was gold. She wanted to speak, but something held her back. She didn't have a phone, not even a small one. She looked at Cale's face. She wanted to tell him, but her lips didn't move. "Thank you, sir," she said instead. She thought fast. "Now that I have some money, maybe I could pay someone to help me make the call when the time comes." Cale gave her one last look. "I'll be waiting for your call," he said. Then he turned and walked out of the restaurant. Amara sat there holding Zoe with one hand and the business card in the other. For the first time in a long while, she had hope. After sitting in the restaurant for a while, Amara stood up. She took the business card Cale gave her and folded it neatly. She didn't want to lose it, so she slid it into a small pocket sewn inside Zoe's tiny clothes. The baby was still sleeping. She touched the pocket to make sure it was safe. Then she held Zoe close to her chest. As she stepped out of the restaurant, her baby's blanket shifted a little. She tried to adjust it without waking Zoe. She didn't know the card had fallen out. It landed on the wet ground near the restaurant door. Nobody noticed. By now, the rain had stopped. The sun was peeking out. Amara walked slowly, then boarded public transportation back to the same place where Cale had met her. She saw the small shop near the corner where she had begged earlier that morning. The shop owner was not there, but the shade was still dry. She sat on the edge of the small wooden bench. She didn't know the card was gone. She thought to herself, "I'll wait here until it's time to call. Then I'll pay someone to help me." But now there was no card, no number, nothing. At exactly noon, Cale stood up from his seat in the meeting room. The foreign guests had just left. Everything had gone well. He should have been smiling, but his mind went somewhere else. He frowned a little. He reached into his pocket and looked at his phone. No missed calls. He looked at the time again. 5 hours had passed. He sat down and stared at the floor. "Why hasn't she called me?" he asked himself. "Did she forget?" He rubbed his fingers together. Maybe she never planned to call. Maybe she's one of those people who beg for a living. His face grew serious, but she didn't look like that. She looked scared. She looked broken. He remembered how she cried while eating. He remembered how she held her baby close, as if the world was trying to take her away. He sighed deeply. "I told her I would take her to a safe place, just for her baby's sake. Why wouldn't she want that?" He stared at his phone again, still no call. After a while, he placed the phone on his desk and returned to his work. But in his heart, he wasn't at peace. And outside, in another part of the city, Amara sat quietly in the shade, still waiting, still holding Zoe. With no idea the card was gone. It was lunchtime. Cale got into his black SUV and sat quietly for a moment. He looked out the window deep in thought. Then he turned to his driver and said, "Take me to that small restaurant we went to this morning. The one where I took the woman and her baby." The driver nodded and started the engine. As the car moved through the streets of Accra, Cale kept looking out. He was hoping, just maybe, she would still be nearby. He couldn't stop thinking about her. Something didn't feel right. What if she tried to call but couldn't? What if something happened to her? The questions kept growing in his mind. They got to the restaurant. Cale quickly stepped out. He looked around. His eyes moved from one corner to another. Nothing. No sign of Amara. No sign of the baby. He walked slowly toward the restaurant entrance. His steps were quiet. Just as he reached the door, he saw something on the wet floor. He bent down. There it was, the business card he had given Amara. It was wet, the edges were soft from the rain, the words on it were still clear. He picked it up and stared at it. His heart sank. "Did she throw this away?" he whispered, "or did it fall off without her knowing?" He looked around again. Still nothing. He held the card tightly in his hand. Then he walked into the restaurant and sat at the same table they had used earlier. A waitress came to him. "Good afternoon, sir. What would you like to eat?" He looked at her without smiling. "Just give me rice and chicken," he said softly. As the waitress walked away, Cale leaned back in his chair. He placed the wet card on the table. He kept staring at it. In his mind, two voices were speaking. One said, "She left. She never planned to call." The other said, "She lost the card, and maybe she's still waiting for you." He didn't know which voice to believe, but one thing was clear. He couldn't stop thinking about what the woman's little baby might be going through. Far away in another part of the city, Amara was still seated quietly in the shade. Little Zoe was still sleeping in her arms. Amara looked tired. Her eyes were red. At this point, she thought it was the right time to call Mr. Cale, so she slowly opened the small pocket in Zoe's clothes to check the business card again. Her hand stopped. Her heart jumped. It was gone. She searched again, shaking the small clothes, checking her own wrapper. Nothing. She stood up and looked around the ground. Still nothing. Tears filled her eyes. "Oh no. No. No," she cried softly. She sat back down, holding Zoe close. "This is not happening," she whispered. "God finally sent someone to help me, someone kind. And now I've lost his card." She wiped her face with her wrapper, but the tears kept falling. "Cale, he said he would come for us. He said we would be safe." She remembered his voice, his kind eyes, the money he gave her, the food, and now there was no way to reach him. She held Zoe tighter. "I'm so sorry, baby. Mummy lost it. I lost the only chance we had." Her heart was heavy. Her lips were shaking. Then suddenly a thought came to her. Maybe it dropped inside the bus I entered. Or maybe at the restaurant where he took us to eat. She looked up. She knew the bus was long gone. She had no idea which bus number it was. But the restaurant? Yes. She remembered the street. She remembered the table inside. She could find it. She stood up, still crying, but with new hope. "I must go back. Maybe the card is still there. Maybe someone kept it safe." She wrapped Zoe properly on her back and began walking fast down the road. She prayed quietly, "God, please let me find it. Let this not be the end of our help." Her feet were tired. Her body was weak, but her heart kept moving. She found a small yellow bus going towards the area. She climbed in and sat quietly. She didn't speak much. Her eyes stayed on the road. Every stop made her heart beat faster. Finally, the bus stopped at the bus stop close to the restaurant. She came down, looked around, and walked quickly. Would the card still be there? She didn't know, but she was ready to find out. Cale sat quietly in the restaurant, finishing his food. His mind was still on the card. He picked it up, cleaned it with a tissue, and looked at it for a while. He let out a long sigh and stepped out of the restaurant. His driver opened the car door, and Cale stepped in. "Let's go back to the office," he said. As Cale's car pulled out from the front of the restaurant, Amara was just a few steps away. She didn't see his face through the dark car window. He didn't see her either. By the time she reached the restaurant, the car was gone. She stood in front of the door, breathing hard. She walked in slowly, holding her baby to her chest, looking around. Everything looked the same, but something was missing. She went to the same table where they ate that morning. The table was clean, no card, no sign. She bent down and checked under the table. Nothing. She turned to one of the waitresses nearby. "Excuse me, please." "Did anyone find a small card here?" Amara asked, her voice shaking. The waitress looked at her and shook her head. "No, madam, we cleaned the whole place." "Nothing like that." Amara's eyes were full of tears. She stepped outside, holding Zoe close. Zoe had started crying. Amara tried to calm her, but her own tears were falling too. Her only chance was gone, and she had no idea how close she had been to getting help. She turned and walked away slowly, not knowing that the man she was looking for had just left, only seconds before. That night, Amara sat on the cold floor of the unfinished building. It was dark. There were no windows, just broken walls and open space. She placed some old clothes on the floor and laid Zoe down gently. Zoe was already asleep, her tiny hand resting on Amara's arm. Amara sat beside her, staring at the ceiling with tears in her eyes. She whispered, "God, I don't want my child to grow up like this. Please help us." She thought of Cale, his face, his kindness, the way he looked at her and her baby. Then she thought of the card. She had lost it. She pressed her hands against her chest and sighed deeply. "Maybe I'll never see him again," she said softly, but just before closing her eyes, she made a decision. A quiet but strong decision. "I will go back to that spot, the same place he saw me. Maybe, just maybe, he might pass there again." She didn't sleep much. The wind blew through the open space, mosquitoes bit her arms. Zoe cried in the middle of the night. Still, she held on. By early morning, Amara was already up. She cleaned Zoe with some water from a small bowl. She dressed her up and brushed her hair gently. She looked at Zoe and smiled. "We will be okay, I promise." Amara was not hungry that morning. Cale had given her enough money to feed them for even more than a week. But today was not about food. Today was about hope. She left the building and walked down the road with her baby on her back. She didn't beg. She just stood at the same spot where Cale had seen her that first morning, watching, waiting, hoping. Would he pass this way again? She didn't know, but she was ready to wait for as long as it would take. The sun was already high in the sky. It was a bright and happy morning in Cale's house. Today was special. His younger brother Elias was coming back home after 17 long years. 17 years away in London. Cale had been waiting for this day. He didn't go to the office. He had planned everything. He informed the driver early and said, "Please go to the airport. My brother is landing this morning. Make sure you're there on time." "Yes, sir," the driver replied and left quickly. Cale walked around the house with a smile on his face. He went into the kitchen and spoke with the chef. "Make sure there's fried rice, jollof, grilled chicken, goat meat and pounded yam. My brother loves pounded yam." The chef smiled. "Don't worry, sir. Everything will be ready before he arrives." Then Cale picked up his phone and called 3 of his closest friends. "Elias is arriving today. Come over. Let's welcome him." They all agreed to come. Laughter was already filling the air in the compound. Music was playing softly in the background. Cale stood at the balcony and looked out with joy in his heart. "This is a good day," he whispered. But far away in the city, Amara was still standing by the road. Zoe was tied to her back. Her eyes were tired, but her heart was still strong. She looked at every black SUV that passed, but unfortunately, today the driver had gone with Cale's newest red SUV. She waited and prayed. Maybe Cale would pass by again. Maybe today would be the day her life would change. But she didn't know that Cale was at home laughing and waiting for his brother. She didn't know that the man she was praying to meet again was not coming out today. Not even close. "God, please don't forget me," she said. The day was still young, but the wait was getting long. At the airport, Kyle's driver stood by the entrance of the pickup area, holding a small sign that said Elias. Soon a tall man with a wide smile and a trolley full of suitcases came out of the airport. Elias saw the man with the sign that had his name on it and smiled. He walked over. "You must be Cale's driver." "Yes, sir," the driver said, taking the trolley. As they drove out of the airport, Elias rolled down the window and looked around. This place has really changed," he said. The driver smiled. "Yes, sir, a lot has changed since you left." But as they moved deeper into the city, the car began to slow down. Cars were everywhere, trucks, buses, tricycles and bikes. Honking filled the air. The driver sighed. This traffic has started again." Elias laughed and leaned back. "How do you people cope with this chaos?" The driver laughed. "We just have to. This is Accra, the most populous city in Africa." They both laughed. But just then, as the car moved slowly again, the driver looked ahead. His smile dropped for a second. There, by the side of the road, a young woman was standing with a baby tied to her back. She looked tired, and she was the same woman Cale had taken to the restaurant with her baby yesterday. The same woman he went back to the restaurant to look for, the same woman who gave her baby food before eating herself. The driver's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Elias noticed the change in his face. "Is something wrong?" Elias asked. The driver shook his head. "No, sir. Just this traffic. He didn't know what to do. Should I stop? Should I call my boss? But he wasn't sure, so he kept driving, but he kept looking at her through the mirror, and inside his heart, he knew that woman was important. About 19 minutes later, the black SUV drove into Kyle's big mansion. As soon as the car stopped, Elias stepped out and looked around. The house was beautiful with flowers by the gate. Everything was clean and shiny. Suddenly, the front door opened. Kyle stepped out with a big smile on his face. "Elias," he shouted. "Brother." Elias laughed and opened his arms. They hugged each other tight. "You look good," Kyle said, holding his brother's shoulder. "And you look richer," Elias teased. They both laughed. Just then, some of Kyle's close friends came out too. They shook hands with Elias and welcomed him warmly. There was laughter, smiles, and drinks in hand. But one person was not smiling. The driver. He stood quietly beside the car looking worried. His eyes moved to Kyle every few seconds. He needed to talk, and he needed to talk fast before the woman left that spot. As everyone began walking into the mansion, the driver followed quietly. He didn't say a word. He just stood by the main door and waited. Soon, Kyle walked toward the kitchen to check on the food. The chef was busy inside slicing meat and frying. The driver quickly followed behind. "Excuse me, sir," he said in a low voice. Kyle turned around. "Yes, what is it?" The driver took a deep breath. "Sir, I saw her." Kyle's face changed. "Who?" "The woman from yesterday, sir. The one with the baby. She was standing at the same spot where you met her before." Kyle went quiet. His eyes looked down like he was thinking deeply. Then he spoke slowly. "The woman who threw away my card. Does she really want help?" He remembered the rain. He remembered the way she covered her baby with her wrapper in the rain. He remembered her saying, "My baby didn't eat last night." He felt something move in his chest. Maybe she was just scared. Maybe she did not throw the card away deliberately. He looked at the driver and said, "Go back to that spot now. If she's still there, ask her why she didn't call me. If her reason makes sense, and if her face shows that she really wants help, bring her to me." The driver nodded. "Yes, sir." He turned and walked out fast. Amara was still standing by the roadside. She looked tired. Little Zoe was quiet in her arms. The sun was hot now, and the baby's tiny head was sweating. Amara looked down the road again. Her eyes searched for any sign of Kyle's car, but nothing. She looked at the sky, then at her baby. Her heart was beginning to sink. "It's past 12 already," she said softly. "If he was going to the office like yesterday, he would have passed by now." She looked up again, still hoping. Then she whispered, Maybe he didn't go to work today. Or maybe he went through a different route." She sighed and looked at Zoe. "Let's go, my baby. Let's find somewhere with shade." She was just about to turn and walk away when she heard a voice behind her. "Madam," she stopped. She turned quickly. A red SUV had stopped by the roadside. The window rolled down. The man inside pointed at her. "Wait," he said. She looked closely. It was Kyle's driver. Her eyes opened wide. Her heart jumped. She held Zoe tighter. As the driver opened the door and stepped out, Amara took a small step forward. The moment their eyes met, tears filled hers. She didn't cry loud, but the tears were there. She quickly spoke, her voice shaking. "I'm sorry," she said. "I lost the card he gave me yesterday. I looked everywhere. I went back to the restaurant, but it wasn't there." The driver looked at her. He saw the tired face, the sweat, the way she held her baby like gold. She wasn't faking it. She wasn't pretending. She looked like a woman who had cried in silence all night. He didn't need to ask anything else. "Please follow me," he said gently. Amara nodded. He opened the back door. She climbed in with Zoe. The driver got in and started the engine. As they drove off, Amara looked out of the window. She didn't know what was waiting for her at the end of that ride, but in her heart she whispered, "Thank you, God, thank you." The red SUV drove into Kyle's compound and stopped at the carport. The driver came down first and gently opened the back door for Amara. She stepped out slowly, holding Zoe close. Her heart was beating fast. She looked up at the big house. It was like a dream. Everything looked beautiful. The driver smiled softly. "Come with me." She followed him. As they entered the house, the sound of laughter came from the sitting room. Cale was there sitting with his brother Elias and a few other guests. They were still talking and laughing. But the moment Cale looked up and saw Amara, his smile faded. He stood up slowly. Amara moved quickly toward him, still holding Zoe. She dropped to her knees to greet him. But Cale rushed to her and held her arms. "No, please," he said gently. "Don't do that." She stood shaking. Everyone turned to look. The room went quiet. No one said a word, but their eyes were full of questions. Cale didn't explain. He only turned to her and said, "Come with me." He led her away from the sitting room and down the hallway. He opened the door to one of the guest rooms. It was clean and fresh. "Please," he said softly, "take a proper bath. You and your baby, you can rest here." Amara nodded slowly, still looking around like she wasn't sure if this was real. Cale left her there and went straight to the kitchen. He called the chef. "There's a woman in the guest room," Cale said firmly. "Make sure she eats well. Don't delay." "Yes, sir," the chef replied. Later that evening, after everyone had left, Cale sat in the living room with Elias and Amara. Amara looked cleaner now. She had changed into fresh clothes the maid gave her. Zoe was fast asleep in her arms. Cale looked at her. "You said you lost the card?" he asked gently. Amara nodded. "Yes, sir. I looked everywhere for it. I even went to a restaurant, but I didn't see it." She paused, then added, "My phone. It got bad before I gave birth. I've not had a phone since then." Elias listened quietly. Cale had already told him a little about the woman and what happened the day before. Now seeing her like this, Elias felt something deep inside his chest. He looked at the baby and then at Cale. Cale leaned forward. "I can't change the past," he said, "but I can help your future." Amara looked at him speechless. Cale continued, "I want you to think. Is there any business you want to do? Anything you're good at or something you'd like to learn? Tell me and I'll set it up for you." Amara blinked. Then he added, "You'll be staying here for now until I find you a place of your own." Tears rolled down her cheeks. This time she didn't try to hide them. She looked at Zoe. Then she looked at Cale. "Thank you," she whispered. Elias smiled a little and looked at his brother. Cale simply nodded. But in his heart, he knew he had just made a decision that would change this woman's life forever. A few days later, Cale walked into the guest room and smiled at Amara. "Get ready," he said. "We're going out." "Out?" she asked, surprised. He nodded. "Yes, you and Zoe need something important." Soon they were on the road. Cale didn't say much, but Amara held Zoe close and looked out the window. She still couldn't believe all this was happening to her. They arrived at a big clothing shop. Cale led them inside. "Pick anything you like," he said. Amara looked at him with wide eyes. "Sir, what do you mean?" "I mean it," he smiled. "You and Zoe, you both deserve it." At first, Amara was shy. She touched some of the clothes and dropped them again, but Cale encouraged her. Soon she picked a few pretty dresses for herself and some nice baby clothes for Zoe. When they were done, the cashier packed everything nicely. Cale paid for everything. Amara's eyes were full of joy. "Thank you, sir," she said. "Thank you so much." But Cale wasn't done yet. Next, they went to a phone shop. He asked the seller to bring a new phone, one that was strong and easy to use. Then he took her to the telecom outlet. There, he helped her retrieve her old phone number. Amara held the phone like it was gold. "God bless you, sir," she said with tears in her eyes. "I don't even know what to say." Cale simply smiled. "You don't have to say anything." They returned to the mansion. When they stepped inside, Elias was already sitting in the living room waiting. He stood up as they entered. "Cale," he said, "there's a place I want you to go with me, and I'd also like Amara to come along." Cale looked at Amara. She nodded quietly. They all left the house together and entered the car. Nobody said much during the drive. Amara kept wondering what this was about. She looked at Zoe, who was asleep in her arms, and prayed in her heart. After some time, the car stopped in front of a tall apartment building. Elias told the driver to park. Then they all came down. Cale looked at Elias. "Where are we?" "Just follow me," Elias said. They walked into the compound. As they reached the door of one of the apartments, Elias stopped. He turned and looked at Amara. "When I heard your story," he began slowly, "it reminded me of our mother." Amara listened, not sure where he was going with it. Elias's voice became softer. She was a single mother, he said. She raised Kale and me all by herself. I remember how she used to cry at night. I would see her when I woke up, but I couldn't do anything. We were too small to help her. Amara's eyes were already wet. Her hands shook as she held Zoe tighter. Elias continued. She passed before we made money, before we could show her the love she truly deserved. That pain has never left me. Then Elias reached into his pocket. He brought out a small key. This apartment, he said, is for you. Amara's knees gave way. She dropped to the ground and began to cry loudly. Oh God, she cried. What did I do to deserve this kindness? Kale was quiet. He looked at Elias, shocked. He had wanted to help Amara, but now it was his brother who had taken it even further. Kale walked up to him and hugged him tight. I am proud of the man you've become, he said with a heavy voice. I just wish Mummy was here to see this. Elias held his brother's hand and smiled. Then he turned to Amara again. I've also made plans to open a supermarket for you, he said. Don't worry, we'll get a good manager, but you'll be the supervisor, and with time you'll learn how to manage it fully by yourself. Amara cried even more. She didn't know what to say, but in her heart she knew her life would never be the same again. Weeks passed quietly. Amara's life had changed in ways she never imagined. She now had a clean house to sleep in, food to eat, and a big supermarket with her name on it. The shelves were full. Customers came in every day. She was no longer begging on the street with baby Zoe tied to her back. One warm afternoon, she was in the office inside her supermarket, writing down sales and checking her books. Zoe was sleeping in a small crib beside her. Suddenly, her phone rang. It was a strange number. She stared at the screen for a moment, unsure whether to answer. Something told her to pick the call. She pressed the green button and held the phone to her ear. The voice on the other end was a woman's voice. It was calm, but carried deep sadness. Hello, is this Amara? Yes, this is Amara, she answered slowly. There was a pause. I'm calling from a nearby country, the voice continued. My name is Clara, I'm Leo's cousin. At the sound of Leo's name, Amara froze. Her eyes filled with tears instantly. She hadn't heard that name in so long. I've been trying this number for over a year, the woman said, but it was always off. I only got through today. Amara didn't speak. She held her breath, listening. My cousin Leo, he came into the country the same day he left you, the woman said gently. There was an accident, a bad one. He never made it home. Amara held her chest. Her heart felt heavy. He was in coma for 4 months, the woman went on. He never woke up. He passed away quietly. A long silence filled the line. I saw the messages you sent him, Clara added. I saw the love in your words. I knew he was serious about you. Amara wiped her face. She didn't know what to say. From the messages. I believe there's a child, the woman said softly. Is there? Yes, Amara whispered. Her name is Zoe. She is his daughter. Her voice broke as she said it, but she didn't hide it anymore. The woman on the phone let out a deep sigh. Leo's mother is still alive, she said. She's very old now. She cries every day. She thinks Leo left this world without leaving or anything. But now there's hope. Amara took a deep breath and spoke with calm strength. Don't worry, she said. I'll make arrangements to bring Zoe to see her. She must meet her granddaughter. I'll do everything I can to make it happen. The woman on the other end began to cry softly. Thank you, she said. After the call ended, Amara sat alone in the small office. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Not tears of pain, but tears of peace. For so long she had lived with questions, she had lived with silence. But now she knew the truth. Leo didn't abandon her. He never came back because he couldn't. He was already fighting for his life. Amara had finally found closure, and now her daughter Zoe would grow up knowing where she came from. A few days later, Kale and Elias came by the supermarket. They saw Amara smiling again, this time from a place deep inside her. Kale placed his hand on her shoulder. You're strong, he said. And she was, because even though life had tried to break her, she stood up again. Not with hate, not with anger, but with hope. And with that, a new chapter began for Amara and her daughter Zoe. Real wealth is not in money, but in how we treat people who can't pay us back. We rise by lifting others. And even when life seems unfair, don't give up. Sometimes the help you need is watching you quietly. ready to show up when you least expect it. Also, never judge people by what they're going through. Everyone has a story, and with just one act of kindness, you can become the turning point in someone's life. Now tell me, what did you learn from Amara's story? Was there a moment that made you cry or smile? Let me know in the comment section. I would love to read your thoughts. A brand new story is coming in just a few days. It's deep, emotional, and full of unexpected twists, so please subscribe to my channel, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss it. If this story touched you, don't forget to like the video and share it with your friends and family. Thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate you. See you in the next